All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm really excited to be and honored to be part of one of Hope's programs. If you've been to others, you know how awesome they are. If this is your first, hopefully you'll be following Hope in all her amazing events that she does over the course of the year. I am here today to talk to you about content strategy and content development based on the hub and spoke model. So today what we're going to get into is we're going to talk about first, why is it important to have a content strategy? That may be obvious to some of you, that may be a painful thought to some of you. We'll go over why it's important and ways to make it a little bit easier. We're going to then talk about the hub and spoke model. So this can be applied in various fashions across your content strategy development and distribution model program. And as Hope mentioned, we're going to go through an exercise today so that you can actually take something tangible home with you to continue to work. And that is our group brainstorm. So to give you a quick heads up on that, those of you who are like, I hate group exercises, it's going to be really great. We're going to put 4 people together in a group, so keep an eye around you. Ideally, you kind of front turns around a second row, maybe the back row gets together in groups of 4, and you're each going to have 5 minutes a person to brainstorm and have the team support you on that. So be prepared for that. Then once we do that exercise, we're going to go through how you can implement that further into the next 2 steps that you can do once you leave today. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end to kind of pull things all together and if you have any last questions. So real quick, first, an introduction. So why am I here and what do I do and what's my background to speak about this to you all? So back in 2009, I decided to jump the corporate ship and do my own thing. And part of that journey was meeting my departure from my comfortable SVP position to meeting the economic downfall and really lost all of that investment that I had planned to put into my business. So I found this really cool thing called Twitter and just started playing around with it and talking about what I was doing. My business plan at the time was coming out of my past in technology, tech startup, business management consulting, was to do that type of technology and process consulting. So I started using Twitter and LinkedIn to get the word out, and it worked. And so people started to then ask me, hey, you know what, I don't necessarily need what you have on your website, but I'd really love to learn this other stuff so that I could grow my business that way. And so my business plan took a complete shift into the world of social media. And I'm really excited that my original business model did not work out because I love doing this. But that corporate and consulting background is really helpful for me in applying this very thing, which is understanding the importance of the foundation for strategy in whatever you do in your business. So with that, we're going to kick off with why is a content strategy important? First, I want to get a little bit of an idea from the group, however. How many of you are independent solopreneurs? Great. How many of you work in or own a small business with a small team of people? Cool. And how many of you are coming from a big corporate environment? All right. Cool. So this may apply a little bit differently for each of you. So I'll talk through a lot of things at many different levels. Some of you from that big corporate environment may have a lot more resources available to you to make a lot of these things happen. If you're a solopreneur and you're feeling like your head is going to explode, that's okay too. We'll distill that down into those small nuggets that will allow you as an independent business owner or small team with limited resources do the very same thing. So I'll try to bring that to each of the segments that we discuss. But again, going back to why. So back in the day when I first started, we didn't really think much about content strategy because, like I said, I was kind of playing around on Twitter. I realized I started to get to know people, started to build relationships, started sharing ideas and tips, and it worked. Same thing on LinkedIn. But I didn't really go into it with, what is my strategy and plan? I really went into it with, oh crap, I have no money and I'm consulting and I don't want to go back to that job. So how am I going to make that happen? So that's how it began. And that's how most companies and businesses started using social media because it was a new foundation. It was a new landscape. And we didn't really know what was coming from it. But now times have changed, and it's really important to have a plan around it. So keeping in mind that social media is your marketing, your sales, your communication, your PR, oftentimes your customer service, and whether you like it or not, and whether you're there for it or not, your reputation management as well. So why would any of us want to shoot from the hip when it comes to that? However, a few years ago, there was a statistic from Gartner that said that even in the Fortune 500 companies, 67% of them admitted to shooting from the hip when it came to their social media implementation. So what does that mean for you guys? That means if you actually start to continue with this plan a strategy, and distribute and implement according to that, you can be really ahead of the game with what a lot of other people are doing. The other thing is, it's important today to have a plan because it's not as easy to be seen in the landscape of social media. And we'll talk about the algorithms and how those things work a little bit further along the way. So what are the critical components and what is a strategy going to do for you to help further your social media presence, grow your brand awareness, and ultimately gain leads, sales, and ROI? Well, I like to look at this from the perspective of the 4 C's. We've got consistency, cohesiveness, community, and cost. And that last one might put us off a little bit, like, uh-oh, the cost. But actually, I'm going to talk about it from another direction. But first, consistency. What's really important in social media, whether you're on one channel and you have a website, or you're doing 5 different social media channels and you've got a website and events that you intend, you want a consistency of brand. So across every channel, you want someone to know. If you're at a Digital Megaphone event, or if you go find Digital Megaphone on Facebook, or you see Hope on LinkedIn, you know she's Digital Megaphone. That consistency is there across the social media channels. The other thing that's consistent is that tone of voice. She's not going to be on one social channel bantering about politics, and then on another social channel talking about how these other businesses suck, and then on another social channel supporting everyone around her and building them up. That would be odd. That would be off, and that would be off-brand. And there would be a lot of mixed messages there. So the other thing that creates consistency is a strategy behind what your brand voice is. How do you communicate to people? What is important to you? What is your business's mission? And making sure that that's represented not just in the social channels that you set up or your activities online, but actually in every piece of content that you distribute, from the language and the copy to the color scheme. And everything goes back to that brand identification. And without having a strategy, that can be hard to manage to make sure that you're on point each time. Then there's cohesiveness. So this kind of comes together with consistency of not only brand, but consistency of posting. So if you're out there and posting every day and then all of a sudden you go radio silent for 3 weeks, when you come back, your people will have already left your party. So you want to make sure there's a consistency in that posting. But you also want a cohesiveness to that. And when we don't have a strategy and we're shooting from the hip every day going, oh crap, I have to get something out there. It's been 2 days and I haven't said anything yet. What did HuffPost put out today that works for me? Pop that out on your social channel. Well, then we lose cohesiveness. So what you want to do is tie things together in a way that your community is coming back for more, because they're learning each step of the way in a cohesive fashion, and not that you appear to be going off in different tangents every time you post something, so that people don't necessarily have clarity around what is the message this business is trying to send to me. So you don't have to be cohesive over the entirety of the implementation. But what I mean is a strategy is going to allow you to identify themes. So perhaps on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis, you have things that tie together and package up nicely so that people know what to expect when they come back and they're prepared for that next thing. And that's very difficult to do if you're doing random acts of social media marketing. Community is the next piece of importance. So again, if you're shooting from the hip, you may not be fully aware of or targeting the appropriate audience with the messaging that you're putting out. You want to have a strong understanding of who your target market is and creating personas around those people. What are their needs? What are their desires? What are the pains they're experiencing? What kinds of personality do they appeal to? So it's really important to get an idea for how you can engage with that community and really think about that in your content strategy, so that post by post, content piece by content piece, you know that you're meeting your audience where they're at. Sprout Social did a study that determined 86% of people who are on social channels actually want to follow a brand, but that they are very quick to unfollow that brand if they appear to be inconsistent, lacking cohesiveness in their message, or do things that might be embarrassing. Or what was really interesting about this study as well was if a brand appears to be trying too hard to be funny or to use lingo that isn't natural to them. So it brings back something that you want to think about. If you want to add humor and a little bit of laid back feel to your social strategy, what makes sense for you as your brand and your voice, and how is that going to work to appeal to your community? So that's a really important piece. And the cost. So that's where we all go, what is it going to cost me to do all of this? However, the key behind actually having a strong content strategy is to save you money. Without identifying at least a foundation of a strategy for yourself at first, a lot of businesses just go out, hire an agency, next thing you know, they're spending 5, 10, 20 grand a month on something that they don't actually know aligns well with their message and their brand and their voice. If you start this process for yourself, you're going to start to see the things that you already have available to you. So you don't want to go out and spend $5,000 to have someone write you a white paper when maybe you have a book that you wrote 3 years ago that's completely evergreen and relevant that you can dust off and create all kinds of content from. So think about those things in a way that this is actually going to save you a lot of money. You're going to get a lot more success out of your implementation, again, saving you money and adding ROI and ROE. So your return on investment and return on effort is going to come back to you multifold. So we're all very busy and we hate the idea of, I need to spend, maybe it's a few hours a week, maybe more, to develop this really strong content strategy. Your bandwidth is going to get sucked up a lot here, but then it's going to come down and it's going to stabilize, and you're going to see a lot more success out of that. So consider that cost factor as a plus. Something else that's really important today, as I mentioned, social media has changed a lot since it began. There once was a time we could just put a couple things out on Facebook a week and everyone would see it. We could put out some tweets, we could put out some posts on LinkedIn, and we could be certain that a good chunk of our network was going to see that. Well, times have changed. Everybody is out there. Competition is fierce. Advertising has taken over. So every day, it seems, the social channels are looking for different ways to present to you what they think you like, based on the activities you have done, based on the things you have said, reacted to, commented on, shared. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter all say, we know what JD likes because this is what he interacts with. And so that makes it a lot more difficult if you're just starting a new social channel, or if you're ramping up an effort, it's really hard to get in there. And algorithms demand quality. And if we're shooting from the hip every day, that quality is simply not going to be there. And that quality comes from those components of brand consistency and cohesiveness and community. So it's really important to have a plan so that you can meet the demands of that algorithm. Stand out with that quality. Another study was done by Buffer where they said, we're going to start posting 50% less than what we've historically done, but make an extraordinary effort at making sure that everything we post is of utmost quality. They saw their engagement rates soar. Now, when I say 50% less, that doesn't mean they went from posting 5 times a week to 2. They went more like from 4 times a day to maybe 1 or 2. Now, that doesn't mean you have to match that, but that does confirm the argument that you can post less if you do better with each and every one of those things. And that does work. And a strategy is going to help you get there. So how do we create that strategy? I love the hub and spoke model, and when Hope came to me to talk about this topic, I was very excited because this is actually a way that I work with a lot of clients in planning the creation and the distribution of their social media plans. So the idea here is you've got one primary theme, and that is the meat of your effort. That's the meat of your creation. And then you have the spokes that come off to the side, and those could be those subtopics that come together to distribute different ideas, lessons, values, educational points that come from that main topic. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 different variations of the hub and spoke model. The first one is where you're going to get together on the exercise, and this is the ideation process. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a main topic, and then we're going to identify a series of other topics around that that come from and drive traffic back to that primary topic. And so this we're going to do around a brainstorm, and this is your ideas, your themes, your topics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip describing creation and distribution because we're going to come back to that and go through examples. So I'll save us some time by going over that later in the actual example setting after the brainstorming that we do. So to further the conversation on the creation portion of the hub and spoke model, this is a quick example for one from a real estate agent. So you'll see that in that primary topic, that first position there is the pain that a customer or potential client may be experiencing. So in this case, it's the first-time home buying process. If you've never done that before, it can be extremely daunting. So the spokes then are different FAQs, frequently asked questions. So this is not meant to be confused with your typical token FAQ on a website, but actual real frequently asked questions by clients who are going through this process. So what this seeks to address is this complexity, which is the first-time home buying process, is then created into something larger form. So for example, a white paper, an ebook, a presentation. And then what they can pull out of this is all the different components of that, which is what can I afford? Tell me about home inspections, finding the right real estate professional, from realtor to lender to lawyer, whatever that may be. Should I actually be buying? Maybe I should keep renting. How do I negotiate price in a bidding war? What can I expect to encounter in the moving process? And how will my credit score affect this process? So these are all subtopics that go back into this larger complexity. So once you have this larger piece of content and idea, you can pull that off into each of these different spokes. So start to think about, for you personally, what is a primary complexity, a pain that your customers struggle with, a question that your leads may typically have. And now what we're going to actually do is we're going to break up into groups and work this for yourself. So actually, as I continue to introduce the exercise, could you pass these around? Thank you so much. You'll each get your own form here, and then we'll probably have some extra at the end if you want to grab some. So what I want you to do is come up with that meaty main topic and write that down in the center of your hub and spoke form. Then what I want you to do with your team is come up with some standalone topics. What are subtopics from that meaty subject that you can spin off that tie back into that primary one? Think about some anecdotes and analogies, experiences you've had. Make them relatable, and even someone else in the group may do that for you. So John David, as a hairdresser, a master hairdresser, may have some ideas that those of you in his group can provide him feedback on to say, here are questions I have that might help support that main topic. Think about some success stories you've had or lessons you've learned. This is something I want to just yell out ideas, let stream of consciousness flow, and go for it, because you can always refine later. So this is a process where I want you to just process and write everything down. And again, if we've got some extra forms, I'll also send you this presentation if you drop me a business card or your email address in the little bucket there, and make sure that you have copies to continue to work with. So what I want to do is get you all together in groups of 4. To make this easy, let's have the front row perhaps turn around to the back row in 2 and 2 if that works. And then what we're going to do is give each of you 5 minutes a person, and I'm going to time you. And maybe now we should do 4 minutes a person instead of 5.
Let's do 4.
Let's do 4.
Did you go through the guts of what they need to do?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yep. All right, so everyone get with your groups. So I'd love to get some feedback from a few of you. Anyone want to kind of share how that went and some ideas that were generated from the group? Any volunteers? A couple of you in here, I'll just pick you if nobody volunteers. Adam? Oh, yeah. Always guiding. Yes, thank you.
We had a variety of topics, and it was really good because I think, each of us maybe only knew a little bit about the other people's topics until we were asking questions, and that really helps that sort of FAQ feeling.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, and that's exactly what the coaching process is. When I'm helping clients develop a strategy, it's asking a lot of questions that maybe they had not thought of or would not ask themselves. So that's a perfect way to get ideas out of people that maybe they hadn't considered before. Any other feedback from anyone else? How did you feel about getting ideas and new ideas from other people? Yeah, help you expand some concepts. All right, cool. So take this with you. There's also some extra forms if you want to grab those on your way out. And like I said, I'm happy to email you the presentation. I have a little festive dish up here if you want to leave your business card. Sorry, there's not chocolates in it, but there's food up there. So you can put your card in there. I've got a card here and grab some extra sheets there so you can take those along with. So now that we've got this, what are the next steps? Do a quick time check here too, because I want to get through and keep us on track. So the next is, oh, now this is not working. We'll do it that way. All right, so the next process is you have all these great ideas now. Now we need to create, right? So we need to create the content that's going to be distributed to share all of these lovely ideas and your expertise with the world. So how do we do that? And we can also use the hub and spoke model once again to come up with what we're going to create. So, as I mentioned, typically this primary main hub is going to be your meaty main topic, and it's also going to be your longest form, your biggest form of content. So for example, it could be an ebook, it could be a book, it could be a presentation. It could be one of those very sophisticated, long, colorful, detailed infographics. And then some of these spokes will be other content that supports that process. So it could be a webinar on a chapter from the ebook. It could be individual blogs that you write about the individual topics. It could be smaller infographic segments. Perhaps you do a podcast. So it all depends on what works for you, what goes back to your personality. So we look at something like this and we also start to think, maybe it's a little scary. Now I have a lot of other stuff to do, or I have a lot of money I need to spend to pay somebody else to make this happen for me. So again, if you're coming from that corporate environment, you might have that support, both financially and human, in resources. If you're an independent business owner, you may not. And just coming from a big corporate environment also doesn't mean you have those financial resources, because sometimes you have to make that happen on a tight budget as well. So start with what works for you. Even if you don't have an ebook or you're not ready to create something larger, as an independent business owner, a small business, you don't have a lot of time, maybe that is just a really nice long-form blog that you shoot off into a series of tips. But how might that work? Well, if you like being on video, and like John David is a natural on film, you'd maybe just set up a video. It could even be a Zoom conference or a webinar, getting on Facebook Live, and let people know, hey, once a week, I'm going to get online here and talk about this topic. I'm going to talk about doing social media strategy and all of those different components, and let people know it's coming. You're committed to that, and you'll make that happen. Maybe you're creative and you can go on to a tool like canva.com and create lovely little images that are consistent with brand and come up with a tip series that spits out individual points from this main topic. And again, I always go back to see what you already have. I have a client who was stressing out about content strategy when I started working with her, and then realized that she had a book. She wasn't selling it anymore, which is why I didn't really realize it at the time. Something, please, if you're working with a social media strategist, tell them you have a book. And I read that book and realized that at the end of every single chapter, she had 10 top takeaways for your financial and retirement planning. And I thought, wow, you've got 20 chapters and 10 tips at the end of every chapter, and you're worried about hiring somebody to create content for you. Done. So she had everything she needed already. This was her book. She's awesome on video. Put a camera on her, boom. She had a video going out every week, a Twitter tip series that went along with an image that her designer who was already on her team designed. So think about what you already have at hand. Start simple. If you have the budget to get support, then by all means do so. But this is a great way to get started. And Andy, by the way, has an amazing science of the periodic chart of content. It's a great thing to apply to this. And the next step then is, all right, now you've got all your juicy, gorgeous content that the world is craving and your community is going to come back for more of. How do we do that? Oh, I'm getting confused here between the mic that's in my hand and the one that's on my back. So we can also apply the hub and spoke model to this. So then you extend your diagram. What are we going to post? How are we going to post it? And what channels are we going to send it across? Now again, this depends on where you're at. Maybe you have resources to be out there on every social media channel. Maybe you only have time for one, and that's okay. You don't need to be everywhere. Do what works for you and do that well. Now this example kind of goes through some options you might have across various social channels. So let's say from, I think somebody was talking about fitness program for their hub and spoke model. So let's say you're talking about bringing people into your studio, your fitness studio. And from that, you create a video series on the best exercises that you can do at home through the winter while it's freezing and you don't want to go outside. So you have this video series. So then what you can do is you have that up on YouTube in a playlist to give you that awesome search engine optimization power that Andy will probably talk about a lot today as well. And that's a great place for that. Then perhaps you send off some clips for Facebook ad campaigns. And those Facebook ads may be somebody watches the video ends and a lead form pops up. And they type in their email and now you've added them to your mailing list. That video series could also go out as a set of Twitter tips. And you have a shortened version that you could put out as a series on Instagram. So now you've just created a video series, but you're using that same bit across different social channels at different times with different preceding copy that matches the audience so that you don't look like you're repeating yourself. So it's kind of similar to if you look at your closet and you want to save money, right? You have some primary pieces that feed into a lot of others, but nobody knows. So for ladies, it might be a scarf and a skirt. For the men, it might be a tie and a vest. But you mix and match those things with other things in your closet, and no one's on to you that you just wore that skirt a couple days ago because the lovely purple blouse that you've got it with looks completely different from the green sweater you matched it with. So kind of think of it from that perspective. It's a way of mixing and matching and repurposing in a way that's going to save you money, help you look creative and unique, and save you time so you can get on with those other things that you kind of have to do, like running your business. So take some additional forms, use this model, and apply that to how you're going to distribute that out across social media. So that's your next steps. What's next? Don't stop the process. Complete your model from both ideation, creation, and distribution. Start small. If you're on every social channel and you're a master, go for it. But if you're just applying this and getting started to ramp up your implementation, focus on what you're good at and start small and grow from there. Get everything distributed and measure. And this is something else Andy is going to talk about, Google Analytics in your social media implementation. You want to know what works. So once you apply your strategy, you can get out there and measure, gain your insights to see what works, do more of that, and stop doing the things that maybe aren't adding ROI to your bottom line. and then repeat and refine the process. So this hub and spoke model helps you to kind of blow out one idea and concept. Once you continue to do that, you'll have multiple variations of it that can become different themes that perhaps you apply month by month, quarter by quarter, and you'll start to get even better at it. And which will help you bring you more success in overall your social media implementation. So, like I said, feel free to come grab some extra sheets here, leave me your card if you'd like the presentation, and I think we have just a couple minutes. If we have some Q&A, would love to address that before we take our next break and move on to our next presenter. So, open it up to the crowd. Yes?
So if you don't have that big piece of content to start with, do you recommend getting that first and then building the other ones off of it? Or do you recommend getting some of the small, easy ones done first so you've got something?
Well, if you are currently doing social media and you are kind of at a standstill point, then perhaps, yeah, you can certainly start with a small tip series or write a blog and start distributing that. If you do have the time and capacity for it, I would definitely recommend to do something longer form, whether it's, you know, a set of videos or an ebook or a white paper. Perhaps you've presented something, you know, like this to a workshop or even to clients, and you could use that as a foundation to then break it off into the smaller pieces. Yeah. Anyone else? Nope. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I love seeing the energy and the exercise. Like I said, make sure to stay in touch with the people in your group. Feel free to stay in touch with me here if you want any guidance in helping continue the process. I'd be happy to help you do that. If you leave me your card, I'll make sure to send you the presentation so that you can continue the process after today. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much.